The workshop was my sanctuary, the hum of alien machinery mixed with familiar clink of human tools as I worked my hand. Steady my mind focused the settlement. Was quiet tonight save for the occasional distant laughter or the soft hum of an alien vehicle passing by here. On this shared earth, humans and aliens had learned to coexist or not. Without struggle, the council monitored every interaction between our species, calling it the great experiment for many of us, though it was simply life. I wiped the sweat from my brow, tossing aside the wrench I had been using. My shirt clung to me from the day's labor, and I decided it was time to change into something clean. The air was cool, and the scent of metal and faint traces of Alina's favorite herb incense lingered. Enna, her name alone brought a warmth to my chest. My alien mate, my unexpected partner in this strange life, had a way of appearing in my thoughts when I least expected it. The door to my room slid open with a soft hiss. I froze mid-motion, my shirt half pulled over my head. Standing in the doorway was Alina, her luminous golden skin catching the faint light of the room, her large, expressive eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment neither of us spoke. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said, her voice melodic, carrying an undercurrent of nervousness I rarely heard from her. "It's fine," I said, pulling the shirt off completely and tossing onto a nearby chair. "What's going on?" She hesitated, her gaze flickering to the tools strewn across the table and then back to me. "I was walking by and thought I'd check on you." The way she stood there half in the shadows made her seem almost otherworldly, though I suppose she always did. Her kind was so different from humans, yet in moments like this her uncertainty felt all too familiar. "Is everything okay?" I asked, moving closer. She nodded, but her glowing cheeks betrayed her nerves and her species. The faint light that radiated from their skin could reveal emotions more clearly than any words I've been thinking. She began, her voice soft. "About us, yes, the Count calls this a partnership, an experiment in unity, but it feels like more than that, doesn't it?" I stopped a few steps away from her, unsure of what to say. Enna was often composed, almost regal in her demeanor, but tonight she seemed vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "Does," I admitted after a moment. Her luminous eyes searched mine as though trying to find something unspoken. "I worry," she said, "that the pressure from the council and everything else might push us apart." I shook my head. "It's not you, Alina. It's just this life." I gestured vaguely around the room. "It's not exactly what I imagined for myself." "Nor for me," she said, stepping closer, her hand cool and soft brushed against my arm, "but I don't regret it." Her touch sent a ripple through me, a warmth that was both comforting and electric. I turned to face her, my heart beating a little faster. "Neither do I." The tension in the room shifted, becoming something heavier, charged. Alina's gaze softened, and she stepped even closer until there was barely any space between us. Her fingers trailed up to my shoulder, her touch light yet deliberate. "In my culture," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "bonding is sacred. Physical closeness is not just about pleasure. It's about trust, understanding, and unity." I nodded, swallowing hard. I've noticed that her cheeks glowed brighter, and for the first time I realized she was as nervous as I was. The council might have paired us as part of their grand experiment, but moments like this weren't part of their plan. They couldn't orchestrate what was happening now. "Do you trust me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course I do," I said, without hesitation. Her luminous eyes searched mine once more, and then, as if a decision had been made, she leaned in, her lips soft and warm at mine, and the world seemed to fall away. Her kiss was unlike anything I had ever experienced, gentle yet filled with an intensity that spoke of her deepest emotions. My arms found their way around her, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened. Her body fit against mine, perfect, her warmth blending with my own. Every touch, every movement felt deliberate, as though we were writing a language of our own. When we finally broke apart, her cheeks were glowing brighter than ever, and her breathing was uneven. I want to show you something, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Anything, I replied. Still catching my breath, she took my hand and guided me to the soft mat in the corner of the room. Her movements were slow, almost ceremonial, and I followed without question as we knelt. Together, she placed her hands on either side of my face, her touch firm yet tender. In my culture, she said, this is how we begin the bonding process. It's more than physical, it's a sharing of our very essence. I nodded, unsure what to expect, but willing to follow her lead. She leaned in again, her forehead resting against mine. Her breathing slowed, and I could feel her heartbeat through her hands. It was as though she was opening a door between us, allowing me to step into a part of her world I had never seen before. The connection was intense, almost overwhelming. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. I could feel her thoughts, her fears, her hopes, all laid bare, and I knew she could feel mine as well. I've never felt anything like this, I said, my voice barely audible. Neither have I, she admitted. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, our connection deepening with each passing moment. When we finally pulled apart, I felt a sense of completeness I hadn't known was missing. Alina's cheeks glowed faintly as she smiled, her expression filled with a warmth that made my chest ache. Do you think the council will understand this, she asked. No, I said honestly, but that doesn't matter. What we have is ours, not theirs. Her smile widened, and she rested her head on my shoulder, her breathing soft and even. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The world outside could wait for now. There was all. The night deepened, and the room was steeped in a silence that felt both soothing and charged with unspoken promises. Eileen's golden skin seemed to shimmer faintly in the low light, and her presence was as calming as it was electrifying. As we sat together, her head resting on my shoulder, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we had come. When we were first assigned to each other, the idea of bonding with an alien, it felt strange, almost insurmountable. Now it felt as natural as breathing. Her voice broke the quiet, soft and thoughtful. Do you ever wonder if the council made the right choice in pairing us? I tilted my head to look at her. Her luminous eyes glinted with a mix of curiosity and vulnerability. I don't think they knew what they were doing. Pairing species based on compatibility charts and social experiments isn't the same as what we've built here. This is real. She smiled faintly, her glow intensifying for a moment. It is real, and that's what scares me. They expect us to be a symbol of cooperation, of harmony, but what we become is so much more than that. I reached out and took her hand, intertwining my fingers with hers. Her skin was cool to the touch, but her warmth radiated through me. Let them expect what they want. We don't owe them anything beyond what we feel is right. Her gaze softened, and for a moment we sat in comfortable silence. Then she shifted her expression, turning more serious. There's something I need to tell you. I felt a flicker of apprehension, but nodded for her to continue. The council, they've been monitoring us more closely than I let on. She admitted they've noticed a bond we're forming, and are concerned they think it's becoming too intimate. I frowned, irritation bubbling in my chest. Too intimate? What does that even mean? They put us together and expected us to live like strangers. Eileen's grip on my hand tightened. It's not just that. They're worried about the next phase of our bond in my species. When a connection like ours reaches this level, it changes things. It's not just emotional, it's biological. Her words hung heavy in the air, and I struggled to process their meaning. Biological? You mean? She nodded, her cheeks glowing a deeper gold. My people are attuned to the partners we choose. Once the bond is sealed, it opens a possibility for reproduction. The weight of her confession hit me like a wave. The idea of creating life with someone from another species was something I had never considered, let alone thought possible. What does that mean for us? I asked cautiously. It means The council will interfere, she said her voice tinged with bitterness. They'll see. This is a threat to their carefully controlled experiment they don't want. Hybrids they want harmony. But only on their terms. Anger flared in. Me hot and unyielding they don't get. Decide that this is our life, not theirs. Eileen's expression softened, and she placed a hand on my chest. I know, but we have to be careful. If they suspect that we're moving towards sealing our bond, they might separate us. The thought of losing her, of having this connection torn away, was unbearable. I shook my head. We won't let that happen. We'll find a way to protect what we have. She leaned into me, her forehead resting against mine. I believe in us, she whispered. The intensity of her words, of her trust, was both grounding and overwhelming. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close as though I could shield her from the world outside. The night stretched on, and the bond between us only deepened. Alina's presence was a constant reminder that despite the challenges we had found something extraordinary in each other. But in the back of my mind a question lingered. How far would the council go to maintain their control, and were we ready to face whatever came next? As Alina's breathing slowed and she drifted into a peaceful sleep against my chest, I knew one thing for certain: whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. For now, Alf, though I allowed myself to savor the quiet, the closeness, and the undeniable connection that bound us, the world could wait. Tonight she was mine, and I was hers. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but we would be ready. Together we would defy the odds and carve out a future that was ours alone. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains, painting soft streaks of gold across the room. Ina stirred beside me, her movements graceful even in sleep. I stayed still, not wanting to wake her, but my thoughts were already racing. The council's interference loomed over us like a storm cloud. Alina's confession about their monitoring had shaken me, but it also solidified my resolve. They might see our bond as a threat, but to me it was a testament to what humans and her species could achieve together. She opened her eyes, slowly, her gaze locking onto mine. A faint smile spread across her lips. You didn't sleep much, did you? I had a lot to think about, I admitted, brushing a strand of her silver hair away from her face. Her smile faltered, replaced by a look of concern. I'm sorry I brought this to you. I never wanted you to feel the weight of it. You didn't bring it to me, I said firmly. We're in this together, Ina. Whatever happens, we'll face it side by side. Her fingers grasped my cheek, and I could see the gratitude in her luminous eyes. You always say the right thing, she murmured, as much as I wanted to linger. In a moment, reality demanded our attention. The council wouldn't wait, and neither could we. What's our next move? I asked. Ina sat up, her expression thoughtful. The council values logic and evidence. If we can present our bond as something beneficial, something that aligns with their goals, they might back off. And if they don't, her jaw tightened. Then we'll have to find a way to leave their reach. The idea of going against the council was daunting. They wielded immense power, and their reach extended far beyond our small corner of the world. But the thought of losing Eileen was even more unbearable. I've been working on something, Eileen said, breaking the silence. She moved to the small desk in the corner of the room and retrieved a data tablet. It's a report on human and alien compatibility, biological, emotional, and intellectual. I've been compiling it for months, hoping it might convince them that bonds like ours are not only natural but essential for our two species to coexist. I leaned over to glance at the screen. The report was thorough, filled with data points, observations, and case studies. It was clear she had poured her heart into it. This is incredible, I said. Her smile was fleeting. I just hope it's enough. We'll need to present it soon before they decide to act against us. A knock at the door interrupted our conversation. The sound, sharp and unexpected, my heart leapt into my throat as I exchanged a glance with Eileen. Stay here, I whispered, moving cautiously toward the door. Opening it, I was met by a stern-looking council representative. His pale skin and Angular features marked him as one of Aina's kind, but his expression was cold, devoid of the warmth I had come to associate with her good morning. He said, his tone clipped. I'm here on behalf of the council. We need to speak with Eileen. She's resting, I said, keeping my voice steady. What's this about? The representative's eyes narrowed. That's a matter for her, and the council stepped aside before I could respond. Alina appeared at my side, her posture straight and confident. I'll speak with him, she said, her voice calm but firm. I didn't want to let her go, but her determination was clear. Reluctantly, I stepped back, watching as she followed the representative down the corridor. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. I paced the room, my mind racing with possibilities. What would they say to her? What would they demand? When the door finally opened, Ina returned, her expression unreadable. What happened? I asked, crossing the room to her. They've summoned us to a formal hearing, she said, her voice steady but tinged with unease. They want to discuss our bond and its implications. When tomorrow morning the weight of her words settled heavily in the room, a formal hearing meant scrutiny, questions, and likely an attempt to dismantle what we had built. We'll go together, I said firmly, and we'll show them the truth. Alina nodded, her gaze unwavering. We will, but we need to prepare. The rest of the day was a blur of planning and strategizing. We combed through her report, refining key points and anticipating potential questions. Eileen's knowledge of the council's inner workings proved invaluable, and together we crafted a plan that would sway them as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the room in shades of orange and pink. We finally paused to catch our breath. Do you think they'll listen? I asked, voicing the doubt that had been gnawing at me. They'll listen, Alina said, her voice resolute. Whether they accept what we say is another matter, but we'll face them together, no matter what. Her confidence was infectious, and I found myself nodding. Whatever the council had in store for us, we would stand united. The night passed in restless anticipation, and when morning arrived, we were ready, dressed in formal attire. We made our way to the council chambers, our resolve unshaken. As we entered the grand hall, the eyes of countless representatives turned toward us, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. This was at the moment of truth. Ina squeezed my hand briefly before stepping forward to address the council. Her voice was steady, her words eloquent. As she presented our cases, I stood by her side. I realized that no matter the outcome, our bond was unbreakable. Together, we had faced every challenge, and together we would continue to defy the odds. A council could debate, judge, and question, but they could never take away what we had built, and that I knew was worth. The council chamber fell silent after Alina's final words. Her voice had been steady, her arguments flawless, but the air was heavy with tension as the representatives exchanged glances. I stood beside her, every nerve in my body taut. I could feel the weight of her hand resting lightly on mine, a small gesture of reassurance that spoke volumes. The head counselor, a figure draped in regal silver robes, leaned forward. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes bore into us like twin suns. You have presented a compelling argument, he began, his voice echoing through the chamber. However, the council must deliberate further before making a decision. Enina inclined her head respectfully. We understand. Thank you for granting us the opportunity to speak. The counselors rose, signaling the end of the session. We were escorted out of the chamber and back into the long, dimly lit corridor. Neither of us spoke as we walked, the silence between us thick with unspoken fears. When we finally reached the small room we had been given to wait, and I exhaled, sharply running a hand through my hair. Do you think it's enough? Ina sat down, her posture graceful even in exhaustion. I don't know, she admitted, but we've done everything we can. Now it's up to them. I crouched in front of her, taking her hands in mine, no matter what they sighed. Alina, I'm not giving up on us. We'll find a way, even if it means leaving everything behind. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. You have no idea how much that means to me. The hours stretched on and the waiting became unbearable. I paced the room, my mind racing with possibilities. Ina remained calm, her serene demeanor a stark contrast to my restless energy. Finally, the door creaked open, and the representative who had summoned us earlier entered. His expression was noodle, giving nothing away. The council has reached a decision, he announced. We followed him back to the chamber, my heart pounding with every step. The room seemed even larger now. The counselors' gaze is heavier. The head counselor rose, again his gaze sweeping over us before settling on Enina. After careful consideration, the council has decided to allow your bond to remain intact. Relief crashed over me like a tidal wave. I glanced at Enina, whose eyes widened in disbelief before a radiant smile broke across her face. However, the counselor continued, this decision is not without conditions. You will be closely monitored, and your bond must serve as a model for future interactions between our species. Should you fail to uphold the standards we EXP affect, this privilege will be revoked. Ina stepped forward, her voice steady despite the emotion I could see shimmering in her eyes. Thank you, Council. We will honor this decision and prove that such bonds can benefit both our peoples. The counselor nodded, his expression softening slightly. Then, you are free to go. As we left the chamber, the weight of the past days seemed to lift the sky. Outside was a brilliant blue, and the air felt fresher than it had in days. Alina turned to me, her eyes glowing with joy. We did, and she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her as if letting go would make the moment disappear. We did it. I echoed, my voice muffled against her hair. In the days that followed, we began the process of building a life together without the shadow of fear hanging over us. The conditions were strict, but they were a small price to pay for the freedom to be together. We worked to show the world what our bond could achieve, becoming a bridge between our two species. Slowly, skepticism gave way to acceptance, and acceptance turned into hope for a shared future. Late one evening, as we sat under the stars, Ina rested her head on my shoulder. Do you think they'll ever truly understand what we have? Maybe not, I admitted, but as long as we have each other, it doesn't matter. She smiled, her hand finding mine. In the dark, you're right, it doesn't. The stars above seem brighter that night, as if they too were celebrating what we had fought so hard to protect together. We had defied the odds and carved out a place for ourselves in a world that had once seemed determined to keep us apart. And as I held Ina close, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, stronger than ever.